have been working on the Allegro, as you can see, and I did the bell crank and kingpin fix over here today. Setting up for it for some time, but I wanted to let people know that this is a thing. You know, when you have a steering damper and a lot of stress on the steering system, you can have some issues with these components that are down here. And this is on the passenger side, so it was fairly easy to get to, but driver's side, pitman arm, all those things that go along with the steering, you know, when you're trying to drive down the road and the thing is doing like one of these, whoa, 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 and doesn't seem to like track straight. So I've replaced all that. The garage I went to for the inspection pointed it out. So yeah, a few $100s later, yikes. And today's work, I think I spent more time recharging my phone to do the video than I did probably doing the repair. But as you can see here, there's some of the bits, the old bits there. And while I was under there, I would clean things up and, of course, trying to do some work on the skirt as well. So, okay, so today in the mail came the parts that you see here. I've assembled them just a little bit here, not totally assembled obviously, but this is the underside of what's called a bell crank. This attaches to my shock absorber, which is basically my steering damper for the steering. This is called, well, this is called the bell crank, but I thought this was also called a bell crank. Very confusing. Now here are the tools of the trade here to try to get that bell crank off and that off there, the bracket. So there's 3 bolts there I got to take off. I got to get that nut off the bottom there. I got to get this shock absorber disconnected. And there's a nut down below there, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to get that off or not, but we'll see what happens. Alrighty. Well, I'm here tucked away underneath the RV and monkeying around with some of this stuff here. What I've got going on right now is that this right here, this nut, is just spinning because the the end of this here, which I will give you the new part to show you. The shaft on this fitting is just spinning, so that's not coming off with a wrench. I can't get an air wrench in it because there's too close to the lower control arm. And this nut here underneath this big boy is about a 28 millimeter or 1 1/8". So I got to go to the store, auto parts place, and buy a socket that's big enough for that. But in the meantime, I've got stuff that's big enough to, you know, spin this stuff off without too much of an issue. All right. Well, I got the nut off here. You can see. That came off, so now I gotta pickle fork this bad boy, and hopefully she'll pop out of her socket here. Hopefully, there we go. See, there. Now she's loose. Okay, so that's what's gonna happen. I'm gonna take a quick trip, get a socket for the underside of the bell crank bracket here. Some people call it a bell crank. I call this the bell crank, and that's the bell crank bracket, but whatever. So yeah, so I'll be right back. Interesting, since it was wiggling, it's got to be some sort of lock. Well, it's not locked on the shaft. Oh, it is. It's kind of hung up there. All right. What's it gonna do? You gotta be kidding me. Alright, I think I've got the camera positioned decently enough to be able for people to see what's going on here with this particular situation. So, with the install, pardon the mower, number 2 son is working on the yard. Anyways, so these bolts, in order to get the old I'm gonna call Kingpin bell crank unit, which you see here, which is I'm gonna leave down there. Got my gloves on, we're in protection this time. Better off. So I've got this sort of just set in place. I just slid the bolts in place. I have not put the nuts and washers on the backs at this point in time. Kind of dulled up my my shock absorber a little bit so it doesn't look like complete garbage. And I've got this pin kind of set ready to go. But if you notice, I'm going to move this out of the way. Getting these two to come together is going to be a little bit of a challenge, but not really if you think about it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take these two bolts, slide them out, leave one in loosely, and allow that to for me to be able to rotate this unit a bit. Or I could just take all the bolts off, stick the kingpin down in that, and there's enough flexibility with this coupling where it is now not bolted in that you could slide the kingpin or the bell crank bracket, if you will, back onto the frame, swing it back onto the frame, and then slide the bolts through. So I may opt to do that instead. It might be just a little bit easier. You know, I'm all about not having a fight with my repairs, so that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to leave this guy kind of sitting there, and I'm going to pull these bolts out. This one's kind of, whoop, there we go. See what I mean? Definitely pretty loose. So I'm going to take the bolts out, leave them down here, and then, like I said, I'm going to take this and I'm going to place this, if you could see it, down into, slide it down right in there like that. See? Now what I got to do is put it back up in position, and hopefully it will behave when I do that, because these are two not very light parts. So let's try it.
strong? Good. Phew, my goodness. That was crazy. Anyway, so yeah, I had to air wrench this nut on as best I could. I had to go out and get a flex connector. Go up through the backside here, through here, to get it. And then air gun it on as much as I could. And then do the old trick with the vice grips. Hold that shaft from spinning and then use the wrench. So this one was a little better because it was cleaner to go on with the air wrench. So that helped out quite a bit. Anywho, that's what's going on there. So yeah, it's all set. Ooh, got a little bit there. And yeah, so that's the installation of the kingpin or bell crank bracket, the bell crank connected to your steering rod, and the steering damper. So there you go. Hope you enjoyed, and who let the dogs out? Sorry, I could not resist.